This is going to be the best review video you're going to watch regarding the 2024 Road Glide, and I tell you that because in a matter of 35 to 40 days, I rode 11,902.1 miles, and mind you, I bought this motorcycle 2 months ago today, and since then I have 12,869 miles on this motorcycle. I'm gonna tell you what I like about the motorcycle and what I really don't like about the motorcycle, so that way you can make an informed decision if you're looking at purchasing the 24 model. You might be wondering why and how I was able to make this trip. Well, I was fortunate enough to be invited to join the Grand American Convoy hosted by the one and only Adam Sandoval, to join his team and ride with the Grand American Convoy. If you're not familiar with that, in short, the convoy went from dealership to dealership with the hopes of raising as much money as possible for the Wounded Warrior Project, and I think at the end, $167,000 or $168,000 were raised in that time frame. So that was pretty cool. Now, I'm gonna start by letting you know what I really like about this motorcycle. What I like about this motorcycle is that mechanically, it is sound. There are no issues. As you can tell, I have a stage 1 kit, right? I have my Bassani exhaust, the Harley Davidson air cleaner, and the Harley Davidson Screamin Eagle Pro Tuner, I believe it's called. And mechanically, there was no issues. It started when it needed to start. It sped up when it needed to speed up, and it slowed down when it needed to slow down. There were no issues with this motorcycle mechanically. So if you're wondering if this new 117 engine is good, it is. And also, it's faster than the previous 117s, in my opinion. They could also be because this motorcycle is lighter, but mechanically, you're not gonna lose with this motorcycle. And this is in its stock form. Well, aside from the stage 1. Now, I'm gonna talk about what I really don't like about this motorcycle. And as many of you have guessed it already, it is the infotainment system. It's what I really like about the motorcycle, but it's also what I really don't like about the motorcycle. I like it for the obvious reasons. It's a big display and it's easy to see everything. But here's the deal. One of the issues that really was frustrating to me was simply when the infotainment system would just turn off. The whole screen would be turned off. It would just turn off, right? And there was no consistency to it. It's not like if we were at 11,000 feet of elevation or going through Kansas at 121 heat index. It would just turn off. And it happened several times, right? Now, I don't know why it would happen, but the first time it happened, I was like, man, it's, you know, I'm with the pack, we're doing good. Nothing's taking on the bike, everything's great. When we pull over to eat or get some gas or whatever the case was, I would say, you know what, let me leave the motorcycle alone, come back, and maybe it'll just fix itself. Well, it didn't. So we rode for another hour, and then I did the only thing that I needed to do, which was remove the side panel and remove the main fuse and then reconnect it. After that, it worked. And since then, it hasn't gone off. But I just didn't like it. I mean, it's your main source of navigation, if you will, and your speed control, what gear you're on, and I just didn't like it, right? Especially when you got used to it. Apple CarPlay. That's what I had the biggest problem with. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But when it worked, it was awesome. Now, it worked most of the time, but you know, when you're in the middle of rain and all of a sudden your navigation goes off and you're trying to catch up with the pack and you really can't see and you're taking your time, you switch it over to rain mode, that's when you really need to know where you're going, especially when you've never been on those roads and you don't know what elevation's coming up, what curves are coming up, are they going up, are they going down? So I just was not a fan, right? The other thing that would happen was when it would rain, for some reason, it would just stop working and would start working. I just never understood that. And again, there was no consistency to it. Another issue that I had a couple of times was my gear indicator. It would show I'm in neutral, but I was actually in first gear. It would happen when I would be riding. So, for example, I was in 5th gear, but it showed I was actually like in 1st gear. But there's no way. So of course I panicked because I don't want to, you know, break the transmission or break anything on this brand new motorcycle. And it was just the electronics. And then slowly, all of a sudden, I would just gear up or gear down and gear up, and it got back in sync. So I don't know what that was about. Maybe a sensor that was just faulty or something, but it happened a couple of times. Nothing crazy, but it happened. Again, nothing that mechanically would stop the motorcycle, but it makes you uneasy when you're used to seeing the screen and the gear indicators. Now, regarding rain, the infotainment system would be turned on and everything's working fine at the time, but the rain would come through these vents. it would kind of drip down onto the screen. The infotainment system thought that that was my finger or me touching it, and it would just change my screens off of the trail of the raindrops. And it was going all over the place. So my system's going, you know, from Apple CarPlay to different, you know, screens and whatever. And I'm like, what's going on? Well, I finally figured out it was the raindrops. This infotainment system screen is so sensitive that the raindrops going down will make it think it's something else. So what did I do to compensate for that? I would just rely on this joystick over here and just move left and right and just go back to the navigation screen or whatever screen I was on and just repeat it over until the rain stopped. That was one instance where everything was working except the infotainment system screen thought that the raindrops were my fingertips. Again, there's other little things that I'm forgetting at the moment that happened with the infotainment system, but those were the ones that just stand out and I remember because they were just very frustrating in the moment. Now let's jump back to one other thing that I really like about this motorcycle, and that is the stock seat, believe it or not. This stock seat, I rode it the entire time. I've never changed it, and it is perfectly fine. Now, if you don't like the look, obviously, change it out for the looks, but for comfort, it works. It's not like the previous seat that you just had to change it because it was just horrible, right? This seat here, the stock seat, is perfectly fine. You don't need to change it, in my opinion. I never had any issues with it. When it would rain, it would get wet, but it wouldn't soak up the water. And that's one thing that I really, really liked versus other brands that are aftermarket and they're good, but when it rains, the sponge or whatever they have in there just soaks up the water. This one here, it didn't do that. The only thing I did to add comfort was add this backrest that I got from my buddy Daryl. So thanks, Daryl. Now, moving on back here, I have a sissy bar and a luggage rack. Why do I have this? Well, because the King Tour pack that Alan from Adam and Black sent me, thank you Alan, didn't get here in time. So I went the old school way. I had one bag here and I would just strap it down to the sissy bar here. And I would do the same thing with the bag. I would put it on the luggage rack here. And that worked out great. In and out, very easy. But I'm gonna take them off because I don't need them anymore. Now, I'm gonna end this video by telling you what I really like about this motorcycle. And that is how it handles. How it handles on a straight road, how it handles in the rain, how it handles in the curves. This motorcycle can handle it. It handles it better than these over here stock for stock. Obviously you can do upgrades and make them handle better, but this one here, the handling is just nimble. It weighs substantially less. You can feel it off the kickstand. And I have to say that I really like cornering with this motorcycle. You just feel more confident, especially for it being a stock motorcycle with stock suspension. Do I recommend the 24 Road Glide if you're interested in buying it? I'm gonna say yes. Overall, it is a good motorcycle. It's a better motorcycle than the previous models. I did have issues with my infotainment system, but mind you, in 35 to 40 days, I rode what some people ride in a year or maybe even 2 years. So you might not even run into the issues that I have. Maybe the CarPlay situation, but not as often as I did because I was actually on this bike every day for that going long distances, as were other people that were in the convoy as well. Now, as you can see, it's filthy dirty. I have to wash my motorcycle and I have to go pick up my license plates for this motorcycle because the tag's expired. And I'll see what other motorcycles they have for sale there. Maybe a CVO, I don't know. That'd be good.